April 29th, 1972. All eyes are on Mason, Ohio for the opening of a new amusement park, Kings Island. Ever since the World Wars, parks weren't striving to build the biggest and best roller coasters. In fact, few roller coasters had been built over the last few decades, but Kings Island was about to change that. The park opened to the public with an airtime-filled racing roller coaster dubbed the Racer. Before I get into the Racer's history and my review, please consider subscribing. It's completely free and really helps me out. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. A bunch of people know what the iconic Racer is, but in reality, it's not as famous as it should be. Everyone knows rides like the Beast, Millennium Force, King Ka, and X2, but almost no one would mix the Racer in with the most famous coasters on the planet. But most likely, none of these rides would exist if it wasn't for Racer. I know, hard to believe, right? But let me explain. When the Taft Broadcasting Company opened Kings Island, they knew they needed one of the world's tallest, fastest, and most thrilling coasters. And yes, the Racer qualified for that back in the early 70s. Some heck of a time period, am I right? The Racer has had its fair share of great moments over the years, such as running the blue side backwards and being featured on the Cincinnati Kids episode of The Brady Bunch. Many people who were there to experience the park's beginnings say that the Racer was a huge deal. And trust me, it was. The ride showed people how fun roller coasters can be and that amusement parks are the perfect escape from reality. Since it was the first major coaster in the period dubbed the second golden age of coasters, it really reignited the roller coaster boom. If you've been to Kings Island recently, you know there are much larger and more modern coasters that outshine it, but none of them would be there for us to enjoy if it wasn't for the Racer. So next time you're at Kings Island, or any park for that matter, just take a moment to appreciate the Racer. Next year, Racer will be turning 50 years old along with the park. That's a really long time considering the ride is still a very fun attraction. But has the Racer always run as well as it is now? In simple terms, not really. Racer became notorious amongst guests for really beating you up. This caused the general public to forget the ride's history and form a decent disliking for it. And while us enthusiasts enjoyed and somewhat appreciated the ride, it really wasn't as glorious as it once had been. Luckily, Kings Island listens closely to its guests and they for the most part fixed the issues. In the 2020 to 2021 off-season, the park brought in the Gravity Group to retrack a lot of Racer's first half. I'm happy to report that the Racer is smooth as ever and offers extremely fun and in some places straight up violent airtime. The dueling aspect is a ton of fun as well. It's always enjoyable to trash talk the other train in the lift hill and it's fun watching to see who will win. With the Racer being a smooth ride again, people are starting to, well, actually ride it, which is great to see. Though this does mean you can't always bet on the Racer being a walk-on like it used to be. In fact, I've often seen it with sizable lines this year, some reaching 30 to 40 minutes. Keep in mind that with both sides running, Racer is a capacity monster, and mixed with its past reputation, it used to never draw lines. But it's definitely a win for the park and the ride itself that it's finally a popular coaster again. The Racer was built by the now defunct manufacturer, Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters, better known as PTC. Now before I break down Racer's layout, let's talk about the best place to sit. If you're a seasoned coaster rider like me, you'll know that roller coasters can vary dramatically depending on where you sit. On the Racer, you can almost always choose your row, and I recommend you sit off of a wheel seat. If you see a wooden coaster with these classic PTC trains and orange lap bars, then the wheel seats will be decently rougher. In the front car, the first two rows are okay. In every other car, the front and back are on the wheel. This means you should only sit in the middle row of each car or the very front row. Now don't get me wrong, you can sit on a wheel seat, but it won't be quite as smooth. Since the Racer is freshly retracked, even a wheel seat will be smooth, but I still recommend avoiding them. Alright, enough with the wheel seats. Should you sit in the front of the train or the back? The back will give you better and more sustained floater airtime coming out of most hills, while the front will give you better floater going into the hills. I personally prefer the front because there are a few moments of ejector airtime up there that would usually be floater everywhere else. Also, the front's just a good amount smoother. Now the part you've all been waiting for, my review of Kings Island's classic attraction, the Racer. We'll be following the Red Racer's POV, though both coasters have mirrored layouts. Since they are two different tracks, this makes them count as two different coaster credits. The blue side is closer to Area 72 and Orion, while the red side is closer to the rest of the park. I like the cool visuals of Orion on the blue side, and I find the blue side to be a bit smoother. The red side, on the other hand, is more forceful, and because of the recent retracking, I now prefer the stronger airtime on the red side. You start off the ride with a right or left hand turn out of the station. You then go through some straight track around the station and meet the other train as you start ascending the lift. Like I said earlier, it's fun to trash talk and joke around with the riders in the opposing train. This can be especially fun if your party splits up and you try to beat your friends on the other train. After climbing the 88-foot or 27-meter lift hill, you plunge down the ride's tallest drop. The drop certainly isn't the steepest in the world and is actually one of the few elements on the ride that provides no airtime. unless you're towards the very back of the train. There's good floater back there. The drop is still fun though, and is more about gaining speed and seeing which train will have the early lead. This is where you hit the ride's max speed of 53 miles per hour or 85 kilometers per hour. You then fly over 2 small speed hills. You maintain your speed the entire time through these hills and get great floater airtime throughout the whole train. After the second speed hill, you rise into a large camelback that starts turning you towards the turnaround. Both sides split apart for a bit here, and this is the one section of the ride that you don't feel as engaged in the race. The camelback provides some weak floater up front and delivers good floater coming down the hill in the back. This valley is a bit bumpy because it wasn't retracked, but the roughness is short-lived because the next speed hill was retracked. This element is similar to the other 2 speed hills and offers good floater throughout the train. If the ride is warmed up, it can give ejector in the very front row. I've only experienced this on the red side, though I'm sure it can happen on the blue as well. You then rise up into the turnaround. The turn is a basic left or right hand turn, depending on what side you're on. It is minimally banked, but since you lose most of your speed entering the element, it offers 0 laterals. After the ride's one dead section, you dive off the turnaround getting some good airtime. This is especially strong in the back row, but still offers good flow throughout the train. This is where the retracking stops. The second half isn't as rough as the first half was, but be prepared for some roughness. It is a bit weird having the first half of the coaster smooth and the second half rough, but it is what it is, and my guess is that they'll retract the second half this year in time for the 50th anniversary. After you dive off the turnaround, you head into yet another camelback. Hey, I never said this ride was the most creative out there, but you can't go wrong with solid airtime moments, and that's just what this hill offers. This is another hill where the front row can offer some thigh bruising ejector, which trust me is more fun than it sounds. The descent is banked, so you don't really get airtime coming down this hill, but instead you get some weak laterals. This is where you come back to the structure and race right beside the other train. I can tell you from first hand that it's a phenomenal feeling being slightly ahead of the other train in the return run. You then fly over 3 similarly sized airtime hills before hopping up into the brakes. These aren't the strongest airtime moments on the ride, though they typically offer some weak floater. Your strain is also probably lowered throughout the ride and is right up against your legs at this point, so unless you held up the restraint, your airtime won't be as strong. What takes these hills from mediocre to good fun is the interaction with the other train. Now if you get unlucky and only one train is running, well man, I just feel sorry for you, because one of the most fun parts of Racer as a whole is racing the other train and seeing who pops into the brake run first. But it is just a fun aspect, so don't let it ruin the ride for you if you aren't racing. From what I've experienced, the Racer is almost always racing, but it is still a fun coaster without it. I know that kind of sounds dumb because the ride is literally called The Racer, but it really is fun even without the racing. Also, if you lose, don't get mad. You can't control whether you win or lose, and it's just a nice added bonus to the already fun coaster. True story, I have heard people full-blown rage about losing. I mean, come on man, that's just embarrassing. After finishing the ride, you travel down literally the world's longest brake run. I mean, not really, but it's so long they had to put a tunnel to provide shade. You know it's serious when tunnels start getting involved. In conclusion, the Racer is a historically crucial ride that still offers a fun thrill to this day. The recent retracking took this coaster from a very rough and kind of forceless ride to an actually forceful and fun coaster. Before the retracking, I'd probably give Racer a 4 or 5 out of 10, but now I'm giving it a solid 7.5. It's not the most original coaster, but it's pretty smooth, offers good airtime, and the racing aspect is just plain fun. Let me know in the comments below if you've ridden the Racer, and if so, what you think about it. Did it rise a bunch in your rankings as well? If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more roller coaster and theme park related videos coming soon. And as always, stay safe, keep riding coasters, and have a great rest of your day. Peace!